I'd like to now call our panelists up to the stage. And I want to welcome our moderator, Executive Director for Aloha Harvest, Phil Acosta. Aloha Harvest is Hawaii's largest nonprofit dedicated to food rescue and sustainability, with a vision where food waste and hunger no longer exist. With the onset of the pandemic and the resulting economic crisis, Phil led Aloha Harvest to meet the community's growing need for food assistance, more than doubling the volume of food that they redistribute throughout Oahu. Like Chef Nischan, Phil has also dedicated much of his time to helping underserved communities, including starting a nonprofit organization along with his family to provide homeless services to under-resourced communities. Phil's family immigrated from the Philippines when he was a young boy, and his personal experience with hunger and poverty has been a driving force to help those in need. Phil?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I wanted to introduce the panel here. I've worked with everybody here in some form or fashion in the last several years, but I wanted to start with Ms. Kina Martin with the Hawaii Food Bank. First off, the Food Bank just celebrated its 40th year anniversary. Yes. So, I mean, give them a hand for that. 40 years of serving the community. That's awesome. And Kina is the Director of Advocacy and Strategic Partnerships. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I understand that's a new position for the Food Bank and how that aligns to some of the new priorities for the Food Bank as far as not just providing hunger relief, but tied into the nutrition security that we're talking about today, addressing the health and wellness of the folks that you service.
As Phil said, I'm new, as you can tell, for not knowing how many exact years. But this position is new at the Food Bank, and it's in line with the trend that we're seeing across the nation. That food banks have this old culture, this old vision you see of here's a box of food, you're welcome, see you next week. When it's actually our responsibility to think about ending hunger, and we know that's a hard task, but part of our responsibility is to shorten that line. I come from not big organizations. I come from working with a lot of small grassroots Aina-based type organizations, but I think what the roots of those organizations share with the Food Bank is our commitment to a number of pillars that we know in our most isolated and most expensive islands we have to commit to. And those four things that we steadfastly are working on right now are being the best partner we can be. We can't do this work alone. We've never done this work alone, and share the stage with some of our best partners here. Disaster preparedness and response, we know it's a when, not if, that we are called on for that. Nutrition and health, which is what we're here to talk about, and also challenging ourselves to be solutions, look at the root causes and the structural inequities that force hunger and food insecurity in our islands. So thank you, Phil. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Kina. Ms. Jennine Sullivan, Executive Director of the Pantry by Feeding Hawaii Together. Jennine, can you tell us, what makes the Pantry unique? I know there's a lot of food assistance programs at pantries and that are helping and addressing the hunger issues. What makes the Pantry unique in the way you folks address that, and maybe more recently in addressing the food assistance needs during the pandemic, how things have changed for you folks strategically?
Absolutely. So the Pantry is the only e-commerce food distribution in Hawaii, which sounds like a lot of words, but really it just means that our clients are able to go online, register. During that registration process, give us a ton of really valuable data so that we can better serve them. And then they're able to go online and shop once a week for the food that they want and need. And so that allows them to select for their family's dietary, nutritional needs, as our speaker had shared. Culturally, they're able to prepare foods that are relevant to their families. But on our side, it really helps us eliminate waste, which in an island ecosystem, I think is something that's top of mind for all of us, of how do we make sure that every dollar that a donor gives us, every item that a food donor gives us, goes exactly to the family who wants that exact item. And so really when we think about what happened, during the pandemic, I think that was, it shed a light on really the ongoing structural need that we see here in Hawaii, in that 1 in 5 families still struggle with hunger. We saw long lines during 2020, but those are still things that I see our organization continuing to serve, and that the big 4 groups that our clients are keiki, kupuna, ALICE, which is our working poor, and physically and mentally handicapped. These are structural groups of people that will always need our help. I don't think that anyone wants to see grandma have to go and get a new job. And so if we believe that as a society, how do we work together with the partners here in this room to make sure that grandma's eating well and is able to live with dignity?
Thanks, Jennine. Alicia Higa, she has the longest title out of everybody in the panel. So, Interim Executive Director of Elepaio Social Services and Director of Health Promotion of the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center. I had to read that. So, bottom line is, if you can share with us the new things that are happening out on the Leeward Coast through Waianae Comp, promoting health and wellness, and your new role in providing the Elepaio social services.
So first off, the length directly correlates to the amount of work that we're doing out on our coast, for sure. Yeah, during the height of the pandemic, the health center had the insight to be able to see that food insecurity was a much bigger issue. Prior to the pandemic, our community reported being almost 40% food insecure, and in the height of the pandemic, we've seen that number exponentially rise. So because of that, and for some, to be able to offer more wraparound services to our community and not just center on the patient themselves of our health centers, we started Elepaio Social Services, which is a nonprofit sister company to Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center that now houses all of the social services that are non-reimbursable. It allows us to go for separate funding from the health center, and it really allows us to focus on providing services to the community as a whole. So under Elepaio Social Services, all of our food access programs fall under that, and we do work not just in emergency feeding, but in food access through farmers markets and incentive programs and food as medicine.
In your other hat, Director of Health Promotion.
So for my side job, my hobby, I work for the health center, and I actually oversee all the dietitians, the tobacco cessation program. We'll soon be opening up our fitness center. And the beauty of having both roles is that I get to tie all of these services together with food. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is our ability to be able to connect this good food to the medical records in hopes of getting our health insurers to do what they should be doing, which is to pay for food as medicine.
Can I dig into that a little bit more? You'd mentioned good food. That might mean different to different people from different demographic, maybe different parts of the island. For the people that you serve out in the Leeward Coast, what does that good food mean?
That's an incredible question, and that's something that early on when the food bank reached out to us to start a partnership to do pantries, it was something that we kind of struggled with at first because our focus was really on our farmers markets and getting our food producers out and connecting people to good local whole foods, right? And we had to really reframe the way that we define good food. And for someone who has a good income and has a grocery store that has lots of local produce, then good food might mean whole foods or organic foods that are locally grown, right? For some in our community who don't have any food, then at that point we have to redefine good food as any food, right? Just to survive. And so the way that we were able to incorporate this new way of thinking and serving our community, we had to make sure that we understood where our community came from. And when you think about Waianae, it was once like a plantation village. A lot of plantation workers lived out there, and the way that our grocery stores were set up was in a plantation style. So therefore, generations after generations now have learned to survive off of shelf-stable foods. So now, when we do programming, I'll tell you my hot dog cabbage story later if you want, but you know, we have to come from this like plantation style of cooking to be able to serve like these larger multi-generational households that we have in our community. How do you stretch that dollar and still eat healthy? But the only problem now is that many of our community members are working multiple jobs and don't have time to grow their own food. So that's where we're at right now.
I think we actually have a hot dog and cabbage and
Awesome.
spam and kale on the menu tonight.
Nice.
So it's good. Thanks for bringing that. Ms. Sharon Hurd, chairperson of Hawaii Department of Agriculture. You've been at the forefront of Hawaii ag industry for more than a decade. Can you tell us a little bit about what the department is doing to help connect local food producers to our communities, particularly as it relates to access to fresh, nutritious food?
I'd ask you to repeat the question, but I think I got it. Access to local nutritious food. You know, I'm going to use the pandemic as a start. People in this room are probably really nutrition focused, right? You've probably been nutrition focused for a long time. I'm going to say that the mainstream started with the pandemic, and the evolution of that was, with the pandemic, all of a sudden our shelves were getting kind of empty, and so the USDA went into action with the Families to Food Box Distribution Program. Everybody on this panel is familiar with it. People in the audience are familiar with it. And the thought at that time was, people are hungry. For goodness sakes, who cares if it's local? Just put it in the box. They're hungry. Let's feed them. And so, right, we fed people. They started to have food, and it was like, oh, thank goodness. And then the focus on local kicked in because our farmers were back on operation. We were able to recover. It was like the panic was over, so we started to put local food into the boxes. And then after the pandemic was done, Secretary Vilsack, USDA Secretary of Agriculture, said, okay, now that we've fed people, we know people are fed, let's focus on nutrition. And he was primarily thinking of the children in the schools. But then our food boxes started to focus on nutrition. We started to put, you know, healthy stuff in there. We didn't put government cheese in there any longer. We were asking our farmers to give us food, and thank goodness for food hubs. Food hubs were able to collect the food, put it in the box, so when you opened it up, oh my goodness, you had a pineapple, you had a cabbage. And we all know what we can do with cabbage, right? Anything, anything. So it transitioned from panic, just put food in there people want to eat, to local foods, and now we're focused on nutrition. We're all here because, in my opinion, the pandemic evolved into nutrition. Let's all get nutrition. And then when the CARES Act came out, we were still focused on nutrition. And there's some people in the room from Ulupono that, thanks to them, the Department of Agriculture was relying on funds from the legislature. The legislature gave us money through something called the Hawaii Healthy Food Initiative. Healthy food is fruits and vegetables. Okay? It is not eggs and local beef and local seafood. But thanks to the Ulupono Initiative, they were able to get some money, give it to us, and guess what? We started to get local food in the food box distributions. We could now support local eggs, local beef, local fish. So what did we do? We took advantage of the resources out there and the trends that were happening and the philanthropy out there, and we helped make us transition through the pandemic.
Thanks, Sharon. I want to go back to Kina, some of the things that Sharon had brought up about these things that came about during the pandemic. And one of the really cool things that came out of that was a Farm to Food Bank program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that aligns with your work and the priorities for the food bank for getting more fresh fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, Farm to Food Bank is one of our core strategies in the nutrition and health, but it's also, in food banking, when you hear the word food security, you're often talking about a family or an individual's food security. But in Hawaii, we can't talk about food security without thinking about our Pai'aina food security. And so those two things are very connected. If we are supporting our farmers and supporting families today, right now, we're also supporting the long-term food systems. And so Farm to Food Bank did just have a birthday, April 14th, 2020. Imagine, think back to where you all were, April 14th, 2020, what life was like. There's some people sitting right here who were imagining and building the first farm to food bank, a little bit of money from Hawaii Farm Bureau, as I understand it, and figuring out how we're gonna do the pickups and how we're gonna do the distributions. And 3 years later, some of you in the audience know how much I like spreadsheets. So I just did some spreadsheets on Farm to Food Bank, $9.4 million. This is a lot of pandemic relief funds, $9.4 million, 7 million pounds of food from our local farms, 40 farmers supported, but it's actually more because Kahumana is one of the biggest, and Kahumana aggregates from a lot of Alicia's neighbor. There are a lot of smaller farms. So the top product by pounds was banana. The top product by dollars was poi. Thanks to some of the people sitting on this stage with me here, and over a quarter of the dollars that were spent on Farm to Food Bank were to culturally relevant or culturally appropriate. That's the buzzword food. But it's the maia, the ulu, the uala, and the poi. And we think this is just scratching the surface. I think when Jennine and I talked right before the panel, there was this sense of, because of the structural inequities in our economy, we need to do more. And because of the health outcomes, because of some of the things you said, these are cultural foods that are not just contributing to physical health, but it's our social connections, it's our family health, it's the health of our aina that feeds us.
Thanks, Kina. For Jennine, you folks are also working with a lot of local food producers. So, could you maybe highlight some of the challenges that you're seeing or the gaps in, how do you prioritize the food security versus the nutrition security, and how does that affect what you folks do at the pantry or your relationship with folks on the panel here?
Yeah, it's really hard. There's not a clean-cut answer, in my opinion, on what is nutrition versus food security. I really think about the whole family, and this is what I say to people who come to our warehouse to see. I'm really thinking about their whole budget. So, while food is 90% of our focus, when we're able to do things like pet food, feminine hygiene, because our clients can order those things, we want to do those things. And so when I look at, we had received a donation, we receive a lot of donations from Aloha Harvest, and it's not always the healthiest stuff, but I see that as part of a whole balanced item, and that we're working with other people on the stage in this room around how do we get more healthy food. So when I'm able to purchase local, I always do. Eggs Hawaii, we've been purchasing about 2 pallets of eggs a month from Eggs Hawaii, because at $4 a dozen for my purchasing power, you go to the store, it's $6 a dozen. And so just thinking through, how do we work with other organizations? We were talking about how you buy from Ma'o Farms at, I don't want to say the price out loud, but at a price that is discounted. And so how do we work collaboratively around purchasing together, supporting local together, making sure that we look at the whole family budget. And so, we're purchasing diverse, fresh, nutritious food, but that, I know that bananas were the top dollar because we got a lot of bananas, and those bananas are awesome. But just thinking about diversity and fresh fruits and vegetables. And then just thinking about other creative ways that we can work together. I've worked with other people in this room, like the Waianae store, who calls me when things go on sale and I can buy things at a discount. So just thinking collectively, it doesn't always have to be, hey, I have a donation, come and get a donation. It can be things like, we have things for sale, we have imperfect produce, we have something that expired yesterday. Expiration dates are a myth, I would say, is the nicest way to describe them. You would know it's food.
We have the girls at our office put it on TikTok reel.
Yeah,
so
we
go check it out.
It
it'll explain to you the best buy and sell by, and all those.
There's different ways, and I would just encourage all of us to think creatively. And if there's ways that you would like to get creative with me, I would love to have you guys reach out and connect and see what we can do together.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennine. I actually wanted to jump to Sharon for a little bit. You're talking about kind of bridging that gap between food security and nutrition security. Now that the 2023 legislative session is coming to a close pretty quickly, what are some of the positive outcomes coming out of the legislature, and how is the department and the state kind of supporting this effort towards connecting our food producers to our service providers and improving nutrition security?
Okay, thank you for the question. I want everybody to know the legislation is not over. So what I'm saying is just a twinkle in our eyes right now. The debucks program, what the keynote speaker Michelle was talking about, the Gus Schumacher SNAP double program, is locally we refer to it as the bucks. Okay, so what that means is when a SNAP recipient goes to any retailer that participates, and there's quite a few of them, farmers market, Time Supermarket, Food Line Journey, long story short, they get 50% back when they buy local fruits and vegetables. So that's called the debucks. That's running through the legislature now because Ulupono, in all their brilliance, is able to attract Gus Schumacher funding through the food basket, and with an initial contribution in 2019 of $45,000 from the state legislature, it is now a $9.2 million program. And it wasn't easy. And it's only fruits and vegetables right now. But with funding from outside sources, we can support animal proteins, fish, eggs. Okay, so right now, I'm going to ask Micah. Right now, it's $500,000. Right now, in the Senate version of the bill, it's $500,000. The ask was $3 million. Okay, with $3 million, it can multiply, 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 and who knows? Maybe we can have SNAP benefits, debucks benefits later. It's not only limited to the the people that are on SNAP, but maybe a letter, an email, a phone call. In the Finance Committee in the House, they're kind of deciding what to do. But it's $500,000 right now. It is Senate bill. You know the bill number? What? House Bill 300? Okay, House Bill 300. Right now, in the Senate version, it's funded at $500,000. Finance is still thinking about it, but that's where we are right now, at $500 out of the $3 million ask.
Awesome. Thanks, Sharon. Just not to put all the pressure on you, but are there any legislators in?
Oh, didn't even think.
Because maybe we can deflect that onto them and then put the spotlight on them. And no, they did not. Last time, yeah, there were like a couple in the audience, so maybe they're in. Okay, got off scot-free today. But I wanted to go back to Alicia, maybe kind of wrap things up a little bit here. But I wanted to go back to what Chef Michel had shared in his presentation about the power of food and transformational change starting in the home. You're a Waianae girl, right? So you service the people there in your that's your people, that's your community. So I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit about your experience, your own experience, the people that you serve, and how the struggles about just ensuring food security and making sure we're not adding to the problems, the health problems, by trying to just feed them and address their hunger issues. And I know you had some stories that you could possibly share also.
Yeah, thanks for the hard question.
Well, I did say I'm gonna end with you, and
so first of all, this is not my comfort zone. I am usually behind the scenes, nose to the ground, like just doing stuff. So forgive me if my voice starts to quiver or I turn red because I don't do this kind of stuff. But one of my friends who's a farmer actually told me, like, Alicia, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. So you better show up and you better speak up because you are representing this community. And I take that to heart. So I'm here. I'm going to do my best to get through this. But yeah, I was born and raised in Makaha to a single mom and who struggled with food. And we got free breakfast and lunch in the public schools. I was fortunate enough to go to private school for a couple years and was pretty naughty and got bounced right back to public school, where I ended my high school years at Waianae High School, and I went on to have kids at a really early age and struggled, like a lot of people in Waianae do. I ended up going back to school and I got a degree in something that has nothing to do with what I do today. So I think all the things that I was able to create in our department is just having eyes open and ears open in our community, understanding community and what the needs are, and having the creativity and the courage to just push forward even when things don't look like they're supposed to move forward. I've been very fortunate to have leadership above me who've been super supportive in my ideas, and I have a guardian angel out in the audience who early on believed in the programs that I was presenting, and it was because of that that I was able to start many of the programs that we do today. And so we're doing programming at our farmers markets. That's how we started in food, is starting farmers markets in our community in partnership with the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We've since gone on to own and operate those farmers markets, and now today have the largest SNAP doubling program in the state at a farmers market. You know, with our Guardian Angel funding, we're also the only farmers market to double on protein at a farmers market. And so our community now has access to fresh local proteins and fish and eggs, and we can support our food producers in that way. During the pandemic, you know, we had to change gears and then start focusing on more emergency feeding. But we don't take the funding that we get for granted, and we want to make sure that when dollars do come our way, that we're having the most impact in our community that that dollar can provide. And so while we may get funding to do emergency feeding for kupuna, it's not just about giving kupuna food. It's not just about getting food out. It's about buying local produce from our friends at Waianae Makaha, whose keiki from Makaha Elementary are coming over to plant that food, getting that local produce over to Waianae High School Culinary so those kids have the opportunity to learn farm to table, because if they want to really, you know, go into the field of cooking, you got to know how to do farm to table cooking, right? And that's the opportunity to get this food that's grown in our backyard at all these different levels. Even food from Ma'o. Today, we're the largest purchaser of Ma'o's produce, right tied up with food land. So that's food that's grown in our community, that's staying in our community, that our youth are touching, and then it's going to kupuna, feeding them nutritious meals so that we can make sure that our most vulnerable are taken care of, especially during the pandemic. We had a high rate of people who just were not wanting to do the vaccination. So our job is then to start from the inside out and make sure that they're healthy, right? And providing access to good food. Which leads me to the last category of things that we're really pushing for is the food as medicine component. And so we have a couple of large USDA grants that have supported our initiatives to connect good food to positive health outcomes in our medical records for our patients who suffer from chronic diseases related to nutrition. So we do adults. We have a keiki produce prescription program that also does that with the help of our Guardian Angel, which is how we started and created that system to the larger programming that we have today. But yeah, it's a lot of work. And I think my role in all of this is to build that army of young community adult leaders to lead this charge, because they know their community and they have the eyes and ears on the ground to know what will work and what won't.
Thanks, Alicia. I love talking story with. She's so passionate about what she does and the things that you do for your community. So thank you for that. And thank you to the rest of the panel. At this time, I think we'd like to transition to a Q&A session with the audience. Would love to invite Chef Michel back up to the stage. And while we transition, actually, if you folks are able to maybe queue up if you have the pictures that, Sharon, if you want to share, yeah. I think that transitions to a lot of the things that Alicia was sharing about the programs.
Yes. The federal government offered a micro-grant program to geographically disadvantaged states. So Alaska, Hawaii, and the territories were awarded funding for backyards to increase the quantity and quality of locally grown food in food insecure communities. So it was a lot of work. We rolled out the first fiscal year 20 funding was $2 million. And right around now, we're getting the final report. So what you're seeing is the final reports. A mandatory part of your final report was to send us pictures of how you use the $5,000 to grow food in your backyard, grow the food that you eat. grow the food because we want you to be food secure. We want you to have nutritious, fresh food. And these are the pictures that came from the final reports. So it's really heartwarming. They say kids and animals, but how about a nice vegetable, right? That's a really nice picture. And so what you're seeing behind you is pictures, results from the microgrant for food security, which, by the way, is going to roll out May 15th. Third round, they gave us $3 million this time, okay?
There you go. I see tomatoes on the pictures. We do have a couple of mics out in the audience, and so I don't know where are the mics. Oh, there's two there. So if you have a question for the panel, please raise your hand, and they will get to you. But if I can start maybe the round of questioning for the panel as they make it to the first member there. But how do you respond to the common perception that buying local, eating healthy is just too expensive? And so just kind of prioritizing access to food versus affordability and quality, and open to anyone on the panel to address that.
I think one of the difficulties we have with smaller scale, local, regional food supply is just lack of equitable access to funding. Farming is hard enough. So many farmers that are significantly sized are heavily leveraged in debt. They have to borrow a lot of money, but they have access to that financing. And that it's not the same. A lot of the other price supports, the tax credits for manufacturing and things like that, it's not just agricultural subsidies. There's a misnomer of the role that agricultural subsidies play in making shelf-stable foods less expensive. It's just not true. $12 billion a year in an almost $1 trillion industry isn't going to make Cheetos less expensive. So it's really, how do we reimagine how we actually invest in and finance and make equitable access to financing possible so these small-scale producers aren't relying more on off-farm income to make a living than what they can make selling cash at a farmer's market. And also just the willingness of all those of us who are fortunate enough to have a decent income to stop going to Costco because we can afford to go to the farmer's market and pay full price for some really good heirloom tomatoes and know that we're supporting the producer who grew them and stewarded them.
Thank you, Chef. Anybody else on the panel would like to chime in?
Just to say it's too expensive not to buy the healthy food long term. And so we're always balancing the short-term budget with the investment in health, because that's where, Alicia knows better than any of us, the cost of the healthcare associated with diet-related disease is too expensive.
Thanks, Kina. I think we have a question up here up front. And then one here in the middle section.
Aloha, my name is Amy. I am a doctoral student in clinical nutrition. I'm also a chef, and I'm also a farmer. So I am sort of in all these pieces here. I am most interested to understand and know from you guys how we are going to add the food nutrition education piece into all of this. As a nutritionist, as a doctoral student in clinical nutrition, that's exactly what I'm doing, is trying to figure out how we take the USDA programs and make them more culturally appropriate. So I'd like to hear some comments on that. Thanks.
So one of the things that we've been really passionate about is working with our Waianae High School culinary team. And I know, we've been to meetings that were discussing, farm to school stuff. And, I think we all know that there was some resistance from some of the workers in the cafeteria when that movement was trying to, move forward. But one of the things that I've been in discussions with Dexter Kishida at City and County and with our administration at Waianae High School is bringing out those food science, human nutrition courses to our Waianae High School students who qualify to take those early college courses, so that they can start getting introduced to that and hopefully spark interest in building a career in that field, because our community is number one we're the highest population of Native Hawaiians, but also we're number one for all these horrible health conditions as a direct result of the low access to good food in our community. Also the education around, if we did give access, which we are, you have to provide the education alongside with it. And so, through some of our new reiterations with our produce prescription programs, we're working to actually build those kind of activities into the programming so that when you're getting these vouchers to go and shop at the farmer's market, you're also going to be having these workshops to teach you what to do with it and be part of cooking a family meal, to go home and learn about the nutrition components that went in it, to share with your family. So we're working on a teen produce prescription program that will do that with the Waianae High School Culinary. We're actually also in early discussions to work with Hawai Omakaha, which is an elementary school farm, to do a produce prescription program for elementary school households on our coast that also do the same thing. But I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is our health center was recently awarded 25 acres of DHHL land, and we're building a food systems campus for our community with the goal of, thank you, we're really excited, with the goal of having food sovereignty and reclaiming our food supply within our own community, but not just that, teaching our young adults how to use what's being grown and encouraging them to start their own businesses and explore that. It also include a training center so that that degree can be earned right there in our community, because that's one of the things that is hard in our community. We get dietitians who have been trained in these institutional settings that don't know how to communicate with our community and send a message in a way that is actually being absorbed and heard.
Thank you for that question. We have a gentleman up front.
Yeah.
Oh, in the back.
To add on
Chef
to that, in all of this, it's really the education of community overall, too, about the nutrition of what's nutritious and what's not, and all these things. And Sharon, actually, I think this is something that might be for you in the next ledge session, but there needs to be a program where you pull it all together, where you're teaching kupunas as well as the kids about the nutritious things that they can be eating, or replacing in their diet, to make them healthier, and the reasons why you do it. I think those are some of the things that overall, you guys are doing a wonderful job, by the way, at the Waianae Comprehensive Center. That is amazing what you guys are doing. So, more things like that. I wish you guys were doing it on a windward side too, by the way. So, but overall, right, those are things that maybe, the ledge can fund for educating the public, the general public, and mainly kupunas and other kids about these things.
This is where it gets into the can of worms, right? Because there once was a program in all public schools in the United States called home economics. And when it was firing on all cylinders, it wasn't just about learning how to bake brownies and how to sew a pocket on a pair of jeans. It was about how to balance a checkbook. It was about how to negotiate a rent and how to save money for security deposits and how to cook real food, how to can, how to pickle, how to cure. That was stripped and defunded with the arts and so many other things. And it's not just a federal ledge opportunity. It's who are you electing to your school boards in the place that you call home? You have power over that. And we need to start having people that are representing our kids in all of the various wonderfully diverse communities that we have everywhere in urban, rural, tribal lands throughout the United States. We need to elect representatives who believe in the power of food and who are going to be courageous enough to stand up for it. You can do everything that you want at the federal level. If it doesn't get activated at the local and the municipal and the township level, it's just not going to fly. But that program existed, and it's gone, and it can be retooled for today, where it includes the type of indigenous wisdom and knowledge and foodways that are going to keep cultures vibrant for millennia to come. That's part of it, I think. Sorry.
No, not at all. Dean, that was Dean Okimoto, and I accept your challenge.
Dean, nice.
Yeah, it is important to introduce bills. I will say that one of the ways that we can educate the kupuna about nutrition is what, again, This is Alicia's stage tonight. Alicia put in an Eat Local Challenge in Waianae. Eat Local Challenge in Waianae with the goal of getting people to eat kale. I said to Alicia, good luck. Okay? The next year, hell yeah. The next year, Alicia's Eat Local Challenge was beets. I said, good luck. But you know what my jaw? She quadrupled the amount of kale and beets that were sold in Waianae during her Eat Local Challenge.
She's
No, I actually met you, Sharon, like over 10 years ago, because we reached out for support from Department of Ag in doing our first Waianae Eat Local Challenge. And we're actually at the end of the first Eat Local Challenge that we've had since COVID. And so this year we focused on pak choi. And the finale is this Saturday.
Chinese
like
cabbage?
Chinese cabbage.
Pak
Yeah,
choi.
pak
Okay,
choi.
got it.
It's really cool because we have the opportunity again to work with Waianae High School Culinary. And when we choose these themed produce items, we task the kids with like creating recipes that they're going to showcase to the community. And so when we did beets, they did like a beet brownie with beet icing and a beet lemonade and beet chips. And we have demonstrations for the entire month and opportunities to sample. And we also work with Hawaiiana and different farmers in our community to teach people not just about eating it, but like growing it. Like you can go home and grow your own. So all these things happen, and we incentivize local purchases during the month, and it's super fun because at the finale, all of their completed stamp cards go into this drawing, and we give out a bunch of prizes, and our grand prize is a ku'i board and stone, so that's a board and stone for poi pounding. And the community just get really into it. We give out incentives so that they check in with us, so we know how many times they've come during that month. But this year, yeah, the culinary came up with pak choi brownies. I don't know what that's gonna be like. So pak choi brownies are doing a stir fry. I can't remember what else, but it's super fun because they're so proud of it. And not only are they proud of their efforts, but they bring out their whole families to come out.
So
and
how nutritious are pak choi brownies?
I don't know, but Charisse is in charge of our food as medicine, and she's actually probably the best person to ask that question. Out of my wheelhouse.
Okay.
Thanks,
My
Alicia.
degree's in psychology, so I don't know.
So we'll try to get to a few more questions. We have one up front here.
Thank you. First, mahalo to Denise and all the good work that you do with Hawaii Ag Foundation. And Chef, for your inspired words at the beginning, and thank you very much. And to all your panelists for all the great work that you do. My name's Danny Rubenstein. I've been in the food industry since the mid-'80s when two high school friends and I started a company based on these principles. We started a company called Naked Juice, the fresh juice company, to deliver fresh, healthy juice to not just to health food stores, but to everybody. And I've been in the healthy and natural food industry my whole life, focused more recently on regenerative agriculture, so the indigenous wisdom piece and the smallholder farm piece, which is where I'm going to go next, is really important. We live on the windward side. We shop either at the farmer's market or in local growers who support us, so almost all of our food comes from the local supply chains. And it's important, as you said, to listen. Both my parents were teachers, so I've got this education thing flowing. Listening to the farmers in Waimanalo and that community and what's important to them. One of the things that we heard, and this is a little maybe controversial, I don't know, but it's important that we've got nonprofits and government and business here. There's a concern about something that I didn't know about, which is this Build 10 that is sort of bubbling up. I don't know if I'm hitting a nerve here or not, but some of them said the smallholder farms were concerned that there's some considerations in there that would not be supportive of what you're all talking about. Now, I don't know if anybody here knows anything about that, but I thought I'd put it on the table because apparently it was tabled last year and it's potentially a concern for this year. So, Sharon, I didn't know if that's something that you know about.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
LUC, Land Use Commission. That's probably why it's on our radar. Land Use Commission determines the use of the land. And the Department of Agriculture might be slightly involved in that because we have ag park lands, and ag park lands are public lands. So they are, when you are eligible for a parcel, you're eligible for 55 years. 55 years is generally the term of the lifespan of a farmer. what that one of the bills going through now is after that lease comes to at the end of it, then what do you do with it? Farmer has already invested so much time and money in the land. He's already producing food. Why should it be passed on to somebody who's going to just check it out, try it out? I'm not sure if that's the same intent. Land Use Commission. Oh, no. Bill 10 is City and Council bill. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm familiar with the bill, but it's not the state level. It's a city and county bill, but it's a really good, comprehensive bill that goes through, really gets into the weeds on how to use land. Ulupono Initiative is probably the writer of the bill. Close? Okay, but we are involved. They meet every Sunday, and our guy, Earl Yamamoto, our planner, he's in there, and they're making it. In fact, once they pass Bill 10 with all its little things, we might adopt it. We might just wholeheartedly just be adopted. Yeah, okay. Remember, that's the city and county of Honolulu. The largest population in the state is in the city. It makes sense that they would have rules like that, right? How many people want to count next to them? So the Land Use Commission is determining where in the, somebody's got their hand up. The city, they're determining what part of the city is going to be, to use that. And it's another thing about gentleman farmers. You might have a farm. The USDA regulation to define a farm is $1,000 of revenue in a year. So you can have a parcel of land, get taxed as a farm, and you produce $1,000 worth of something. So I think it's kind of like trying to take everything into account and just kind of making it fair and equal. Again, Bill 10 is the city and county bill. They're kind of hashing through it right now.
Kid, sorry for the awkward transition. We want to get to a couple more questions in the back of the room.
Hello. Aloha. I'm Brandon Kennard. And I had 2 questions, if you allow me. Are the crops currently being grown and purchased from local growers subject to a growing practice evaluation? And is there a need or ability to request different sources needed from the local farmers? So if they are using heavy pesticide applications, are you looking at organic qualifications, or are you looking at other growing practices? And
since we're the only regulatory, the state is probably the only regulatory agency. There are several bills running through right now regarding pesticides, and bottom line is we follow federal regulations. There are organic pesticides. There's the, there's a listing of all the organic pesticides that are approved, so we follow that list. As far as what we tell the farmers to do, we don't tell the farmers to do anything. God bless America. You can grow what you want to grow. You can grow whatever makes the most revenue for you, because if you make money, you're sustainable, right? Pesticides is a big deal. We get it. But if the federal government says it's okay, then that's our RUP, restricted use pesticides. So I hope that was not, it's probably not the answer you want, but yeah.
Are you asking if the pantries put some kind of requirement on what comes from a producer?
We do not. So in an ideal world, I would only buy organic. I would only buy from my exact backyard. I would only buy non-plastic. Unfortunately, as I think everyone on the stage and in this room understands, we are resource constrained. So we really have to look at how our dollar goes farthest. So that means that sometimes we're not buying organic. We're looking at organizations that we have long-term relationships that we can help support them when they say, hey, we're having a bad month, can you help us purchase? We're really thinking about a community and how to make dollars go farthest while keeping in mind health, nutrition, longevity, but at the same time, we're a nonprofit, and so we are not making revenues. I love your idea, we're not there yet. But so we just have to think about how our dollar goes farthest, and that frequently means, not buying organic, and we're okay with that.
We're in the same place, and I think, but some of the farmers we work with, Kako'iwi on the windward side, for example, if they're practicing indigenous farming, they're not using pesticides. So it's not like we have a hard and fast rule for what you very eloquently explained, but I think we're trying to find the farmers that we can support on a monthly basis, and they know that we're the customer of last resort. If they're having a bad month, if the roadside poi stand is low and a chef has changed the menu and they're no longer buying that, then that's where we can help absorb that, and it's win-win for everyone. And so we are trying to find those relationships that we know are contributing to regenerative and indigenous agricultural practices, but it's not a hard and fast rule at this point because we'd simply be supply constrained.
Thank you for asking that difficult question, and thank you for the panel for being honest and straightforward with the responses.
Can I answer that really quick? Sorry,
Sure.
I'll be super quick.
What? Because you're getting in between dinner.
No, but it's really important. I think for us, our priority is to shop Waianae local first, and that's how we prioritize our purchases. We buy from our local Waianae farmers first, and we prioritize educational farms first. And then we go island-wide, then we go statewide.
Thanks, Alicia. I do apologize we can't get to the rest of the questions, but I did want to thank the panel for an engaging conversation. Thank you, Chef Nischan, for the wonderful work and the presentation earlier. And I'd like to pass it back to Denise to close us off.
Thanks, Phil. A big mahalo to our panelist and keynote speaker, Chef Michel Nischan. Before we close, I want to put in a plug for Hawaii Agricultural Foundation because I recently found out that many people don't know what the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation does, but we basically support the local ag industry. And in addition to Eat, Think, Drink, we provide more than 170 teachers and over 5,000 students annually with ag education in our public schools. And on Saturday, I'm talking about this because on Saturday, on April 22nd, we will feature a program called Young Entrepreneurs at KCC Farmers Market, where our students will feature value-added products they created using a locally sourced product in the classroom. So these are, there'll be 20 classes that created product using locally sourced products or produce, and they'll be on sale at our farmers market Saturday. So if you're free, please support them. And I'd also like to mention our Keiki in the Kitchen cookbook. We created this a couple of years ago, and it's on sale tonight. This kids cookbook features 40 kid-friendly recipes from local chefs, and all proceeds go to benefit the Hawaii Ag Foundation. So if you like what we do, please consider purchasing a cookbook or purchasing some of our merchandise. This is Mika the sous chef, or please consider making a donation. And now for the eating and drinking, I would like to invite everyone to take a seat in the adjoining room and enjoy a meal prepared by Prince Waikiki's executive chef, Jeremy Shigekane. He's created a nutritious and delicious meal from products typically found and distributed by local food pantries. You will also have Chef Michel Nischan's wholesome crave, chala masala cauliflower soup. You don't know how hard it was to get this soup here on time. Ann Wharton, thank you for getting it here by 2 o'clock today. And a mahalo again to our presenting sponsor, Central Pacific Bank, along with our other sponsors for making Eat, Think, Drink possible. And on behalf of Hawaii Agricultural Foundation, mahalo for joining us.